Hey everyone, it's Miss Adams, and in this video we're going to talk about solving inequalities. So when we're working with inequalities, we use some different symbols. So we use the parentheses and an open circle, and the parentheses means not included or open. And when we graph, it starts with an open circle or ends with an open circle, then you know that those go together. So the parentheses and the open circle go together. And then bracket means it's included or it's closed. So when a graph starts or ends with a filled in circle, we use the bracket. Okay, and then we always use parentheses for infinity or negative infinity. We also use the less than or equal to, the greater than or equal to symbols. And I always remember less than kind of looks more like an L, just kind of slanted a little more. Okay, so the one that looks more like an L is less than, and the one going the other direction is greater than. And then the little line under it means it can also equal that value. All right, a big important rule when you're solving inequalities is if you multiply or divide by a negative. That means if you're trying to get rid of it and it's a negative and you use multiplication or division to get rid of a negative number, then you have to flip your inequality sign, which means if it was a less than, it's going to become a greater than, or vice versa. All right, so solve, graph, and write the solution to the inequality in interval notation. So I'm going to solve this pretty much the same way I would solve an equation, except for I have that one special rule that if I multiply or divide by a negative, I have to flip the inequality sign. All right, so in this one, I'm going to go ahead and distribute. I could go ahead and distribute the 4. But since there's nothing else attached to it or in front of the 4, I can go ahead and just divide by 4 to get rid of it. So that would give me x plus 3 is greater than negative 24 divided by 4 gives me negative 6. And I want to get x by itself, so I would go ahead and subtract 3 on both sides. That means x, it has to be greater than negative 9. Negative 6 minus 3 is negative 9. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and graph this. So I'm going to start at negative 9. I'm going to put that in the middle. And if I go to the right, those are going to be bigger numbers. So negative 8 is bigger than negative 9. Negative 7 is bigger than negative 8. Negative 6 is bigger than negative 7. And then the other direction will be smaller numbers. So negative 10, negative 11, negative 12. Because my symbol was just a greater than, it did not have the equal to part, I'm going to put an open circle at negative 9. And it says x is greater than negative 9. So I'm shading the numbers that are bigger than negative 9. Okay, you can also look at your symbol, and if you have your variable first, so if you read it from left to right and the variable comes first, like ours does, x is greater than negative 9, then it kind of makes an arrow telling you which way to point. That only works if you have your variable first. All right, and then in interval notation, I'm going from negative 9 with an open circle, so that means I would use a parenthesis, and I'm going to positive infinity. So I'm going from negative 9, open circle, I'm going to put a parenthesis, to positive infinity. Now you cannot capture infinity, so you can't put a bracket, because once you've included it, then there's another number, because it goes on and on and on forever. So you have to use a parenthesis there. All right, the next one. I'm going to go ahead, I have to distribute that negative 3 this time, because there's something in front of it. So I'm going to distribute the negative 3. That's going to give me x minus 3x minus 6 is greater than 4. I can combine like terms. I have a 1x minus 3x. That gives me negative 2x minus 6 is greater than 4. I'm going to get rid of the minus 6 by adding 6 to both sides. And I get negative 2x is greater than 4 plus 6 gives me 10. And now I'm going to divide by negative 2. I'm dividing by a negative, so I have to flip my inequality sign. So now it's a less than. X is less than 10 divided by negative 2 gives me negative 5. So on my number line, I'm going to put negative 5 in the middle, put smaller numbers to the right, or bigger numbers to the right and smaller numbers to the left. And at negative 5, I'm going to use an open circle because my inequality sign was a less than. It did not include the equal to. And I'm going to shade to the left. It's everything less than negative 5. Again, because my inequality sign was first, it kind of makes an arrow telling me which way to shade. And then for interval notation, I'm going all the way from negative infinity to negative 5, and I'm not including either one, so I'm going to use parentheses. All right, this one. On the left side, I have to distribute a negative. So it's really like a 1 there. Negative 1 is what I'm distributing. So I have 3 minus 2x plus 7, because a negative times a negative makes it a positive, is less than or equal to 34 minus 6x. I'm going to combine like terms. So I have a 3 and a 7, and they're both positive. So I have negative 2x plus 10 is less than or equal to 34 minus 6x. I'm going to move the 6x. It was a negative 6x, so I'm going to add 6x to both sides. That gives me 4x plus 10 is less than or equal to 34. I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides. So that gives me 4x is less than or equal to 24. Then divide both sides by 4. X is less than or equal to 6. On my number line, I'm going to put 6 in the middle. Larger numbers to the right, smaller numbers to the left. At the 6, my symbol is less than or equal to, so I'm going to use a filled-in circle at 6, and I'm going to shade to the left. For interval notation, I'm going from negative infinity. I have to use a parenthesis with my infinities. And I'm going to 6, and since it's a filled-in circle, I'm going to use a bracket because I am including the 6. Alright, this one I have to distribute on both sides of the inequality, so I'm going to distribute a negative 3, and on this side I'm going to distribute a negative, or a negative 1 if you want to put the 1 there. Alright, so that gives me 5x minus 3x minus 18 is greater than or equal to 8 minus x plus 7. I'm going to combine like terms. Over here I have 5x minus 3x, and on the other side I have 8 and a 7. So that gives me 2x minus 18 is greater than or equal to, I have a negative x plus 15. I'm going to move that negative x by adding 1x to both sides. So that gives me 3x minus 18 is greater than or equal to 15. Add 18 to both sides. I get 3x is greater than or equal to 33. Divide by 3, and I get x is greater than or equal to 11. Alright, so make my number line. At 11, I have greater than or equal to. So because it has the equal to, I'm going to do a filled-in circle. And I'm shading to the right all the numbers that are greater than 11. I'm including 11, so it's going to be a bracket, and I'm going to positive infinity. Infinities always get a parenthesis. Alright, this one. I'm going to distribute the negative 8. I get negative 8x plus 8 minus x is less than or equal to negative 28. Combine like terms, that x really has a 1 in front of it. So if I have negative 8x minus another x, that gives me negative 9x plus 8 is less than or equal to negative 28. Subtract 8 on both sides. I get negative 9x is less than or equal to negative 36. Divide by a negative 9. Because I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip my sign. So now it's a greater than or equal to. X is greater than or equal to positive 4. On my number line, I'm going to put a filled-in circle because it has the equal to part at 4. And I'm going to shade all the numbers that are greater than 4. So I'm going to shade to the right. In interval notation, I'm including the 4. So it's going to get a bracket. And I'm going into positive infinity. And I'm going to put a parenthesis. Alright, that's it.